You know, they had another study the other day. It proved that all the studies that we have been studying over the years is accumulation of knowledge that has been studied before and has been written down in books for thousands and thousands of years. And as one clerk that I talked to at the store, when I mentioned, well, you know, they've got a study that proves that, and she says, why do they make studies of things we already know? And it's true. There are so many studies out today, but they're just studying things that we already know. So we study studies to pay people from public tax dollars usually, so that there are more studies to prove that the studies that we've known, oh wait, there's an ancient book, it says, there is nothing new under the sun. All that has been will be. All that will be has been. There is nothing new under the sun. King Solomon wrote that. He wrote it in the book of Ecclesiastes. And the older I get, and the more different cultures and different people that I run into, American, European, Asian, African, it's all the same. We're all just people. But, you know, somebody wants to have the most current study so that they can be in charge and claim that they're the current authority. So we study all these studies. And then we have studies to contradict the other people's studies. I saw this one on the internet where they took one of the models of, it looked like an airplane. It was a toy that they found in South America. And they took the toy, it looked like an airplane, and they took off some of the little fancy extra designs on it, and they built it up, and it was a flying airplane. And then somebody came along and said, well, these people don't know anything. Look, there's a fish in the water here. It looks just like the fish. So they're probably just copying the fish. But everybody knows that the fish go through the water similar to how planes fly in the air. So they could have copied the fish to make an airplane. I mean, after all, modern man copied the box fish to create a more aerodynamic car. So what's the possibility that the ancient people, who, you know, even today people like to say other people are ignorant and don't know as much as we know. So who's to say that the ancient people didn't have the ability to make an airplane? We can't say, you know. But we make studies to contradict other people's studies because they studied stuff from somebody else who studied it years and years and years ago. What we really need to have is the mother of all studies. Oh wait, we probably do. It's ancient text. You know, there's nothing new under the sun. Did they ever have wooden airplanes? Well, yeah. You know, the first airplanes were wooden. They were covered with cloth, and you know, that's the way to do it, right? Well, that's what they knew. That was the technology. But today, with our metal and everything, we don't have to have that, right? Well, no. Actually, in World War II, they had a cloth-covered wing on a PBY. Used it during all of the conflict of World War II against metal aircraft because it was lighter and it made a great amphibious plane. And the British, they actually had a wooden airplane. It's called a Mosquito, or de Havilland. He designed it and built it out of wood and screws because he knew that the British would need a twin-engine aircraft of high speed to help contradict what the Germans were doing during World War II. So, can airplanes be built out of wood? Oh yeah, sure. Does wood deteriorate and crumble and you can't find it anymore? Oh yeah, sure. Could they have had flying machines before that we can't find. Oh yeah, sure. Go ahead, try and find a PBY. Go ahead and try and find a de Havilland Mosquito, or a PT boat for that matter. That was made out of wood, plywood. And wood, unlike metal, rots away a whole lot quicker. And it's easier to use, and it's as strong as steel. In certain lengths, anyhow. So who's to say the ancients didn't have wooden airplanes and wooden ships and stuff? I mean, they had models of some of it. But it gets back to, how do you find that out? Well, you can follow written records, you can have more studies. But what's the point? What's the point of all these studies other than to have pay somebody with a degree to tell us what we already know? Which is a waste of time nowadays, especially with lower taxes. So we study to study instead of just getting on with doing what we know to do, like eating and sleeping and working and exercising, and acknowledging that people know stuff. You don't need to have an expert tell you things. People know it. You don't need a PhD degree. You don't need a master's degree. You don't need a bachelor's degree. There's a lot of people out there who know how the world functions without degrees. In fact, Einstein did some of his greatest work before he ever made it into a college, right? Some of it. There's a lot of people that studied a lot of things without degrees. They didn't need to study. They just went out and they figured it out themselves. Yeah, well, the mother of all studies already been done. It's already written. It's in a book. And we don't need the experts to tell us what we already know. Hey, if you spend more than you make, you're going to become bankrupt. So the U.S. government should stop spending 1/3 of its budget on credit. So the rest of us who are trying to earn a living don't go bankrupt. Oh well. The other thing about studies is that the people doing the studies today are educating other people in their same way of thinking in college, higher education. And more of those people are going into college and coming out of college with gobs and gobs and gobs of debt. They really ought to do a study how long it takes to pay off the college debt, where they're making you pay for knowledge and certifying that you have the knowledge and some understanding and the ability to regurgitate it on a consistent basis, and how long it takes and how much money it takes to pay off that debt. For information which, by the way, they used to be able to cram into people with 4-year degrees and with 2-year degrees and without a degree. It's not like a master's degree is getting you more knowledge or more information. I talked to a master's degree student the other day, and she said, well, you know, a couple of my courses, I could have passed the final exam just by reviewing my undergraduate class. I'm like, you're kidding. She says, no. The master's degree course was not taught and didn't teach anything more than what was taught in the undergraduate program that taught what was supposedly the foundation for that class. And when I went to the university, I found the same thing. there were classes at the university, which is supposed to be a 4-year degree. You're teaching people to be engineers and stuff like that. And I'm like, they're not even giving them the good foundation that I got with my associate degree. And then they're turning around and they're hiring these people in place of people with 20 years of experience and an associate degree. And the kids don't know what they're doing. So not only do you have degree inflation, you have people with a 4-year degree not trained to do what people used to be trained to do with a 2-year degree in the place of people with 2-year degrees. So it's not just that it's inflation, it's not just that it's costly. It's that when you put the person in there, they actually don't have the skill set. They have to learn on the job stuff that other people were taught in a 2-year degree or taught with 10 years, 5 years of experience. So now calculate that into the cost of a 4-year degree or a master's degree. Because when I was at the university, I had to support, well, I did. I supported research. Guys getting their master's degree and PhDs, and I'm like, good night, nurse. These guys, they don't have the basics from which to gather their data, to run through their formulas. They got to have somebody go out and hunt it up for them. They don't know the basics of gathering data and comparing things. But they're taught a certain way of processing the data. They're taught a certain level of experimentation. And then they're also taught, there's scientific bias where they exclude other things like they do with the round cow, which somebody with 5 or 10 years of experience doesn't do. So when you consider the degree inflation and the studies of studies, the costliness of it all is not just in the money, but in the information that these people do not pass along, or they exclude and then claim they have the authority and the credibility to say, well, that doesn't matter. I read, it was in the National Geographic, about aging, all the different factors that go into aging. And they studied it was a certain Jewish population in Europe. And they mentioned lifestyles, and these people tend to live long. And they mention a few things, but they don't get into how these people actually think and go about their diet and stuff like that, because that's all out of the Bible. It's the Torah. And modern science ignores the Bible and the Torah. So they exclude all of that stuff and they just mention the things that they think are important. But if you studied the Bible and the Torah, if you studied different religious texts throughout the world, if you study wise thinkers, even outside of religion, you'll find that there's this common light, this common amount of truth in all of them. So if you come at it with just the scientific model, especially where you are ignoring what things you find in the religions, you come out with a refined, not a whole grain type of knowledge. And it's missing things. And you can come to conclusions that are only partially correct. That's the high cost of our educational system today. They're excluding things. They're taking years to educate people in a system that studies and ignores basic facts of life. Yeah, so the mother of all studies has been done. And Solomon helped write it. There's nothing new under the sun. And when they do enough excavation and digging up stuff, if it hasn't deteriorated, I mean, if the people before us somehow managed a time capsule that wooden aircraft, totally green technology, things that we're just inventing now so that's biodegradable and everything. I mean, if they haven't if they've got, imagine that. They could dig up a time capsule with technology we're just getting into right now. Totally green, totally energy efficient, doesn't waste, doesn't use up the planet, because they realized that already at one time, right? But like it is in this culture, the people next to them were just more violent and mean. So they came over and they killed those mountain people, and they got their reward, There's a song that goes like that. It was written in the 60s or 70s. That's where it's coming from. And so they killed the mountain people, and they got their just reward, and they turned the stone and they looked beneath it. And all it said was, peace on earth. Nothing new under the sun. That's what makes for long life. Peace on earth. So, let's stop wasting time. Stop wasting money. Let's stop wasting people. Peace on earth is all it said. And what has been will be. There's nothing new under the sun. And we should get off of our white bread, preservative-filled educational system. Get some whole grain and get some people who really know how to bake stuff up. Well, that was my afterthought. Have a nice day.